Welcome to the Erectile Dysfunction Radio Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to educating and empowering men to address erectile dysfunction, improve confidence, and enhance the satisfaction in their relationships. This podcast is brought to you by erectioniq.com. Learn more at erectioniq.com.
Welcome to the Erectile Dysfunction Radio Podcast. I am Mark Goldberg, certified sex therapist. I am deeply passionate about working with men like you to help resolve their ED.
And we're back on the ED Radio Podcast, today discussing erectile dysfunction and condoms. Why do you think we need to have an episode about erectile dysfunction and condoms? Is this a topic that is hotly debated out there?
So I don't know if it's hotly debated, but I think contraception is a generally important topic, and different forms of contraception can impact all sorts of components of human sexuality and certainly partnered sexuality. And because I think condoms get a bad rap and they tend to be something that people will avoid or will discard, put themselves into all kinds of compromising situations, I think it's a worthwhile topic to explore how condoms can impact sexual performance and possibly what can be done to alleviate some of that.
As far as you know, is it a myth that using a condom can cause erectile dysfunction?
No, so I don't think it's a myth at all. I think condoms can have a significant impact on erections. So there's a number of components that condoms bring to a sexual encounter that can impact both the physical and mental aspects of erections and healthy erections. So on the physical end, many men will report decreased physical sensation, discomfort with the material of the condoms, or sometimes condoms come with various lubrications or powders that can be physically unpleasing. On the mental side of condoms, there's a number of things that go on. So first and foremost, for many men, a pretty constant flow of sexual stimulation is necessary to maintain an erection. Reaching for a condom, fumbling with the packaging, putting the condom on is an opportunity to pause sexual stimulation and potentially invite all sorts of worries and concerns and performance anxieties into one's head. Condom use is also clearly associated with preventing sexually transmitted diseases and with preventing pregnancy. These are two topics that we have covered in previous episodes in terms of the impact that the fear of contracting a sexually transmitted disease or an unwanted pregnancy could have on a man. So using a condom can also bring up all sorts of concerns that may be on the back burner of a man's mind and distract from sexual pleasure. Lastly, just another mental component is a lot of guys worry about the impact of condoms on their partner's potential sexual pleasure. Guys often debate, should they use a condom, should they not use a condom? And a condom can become a tool of blame or responsibility for what they perceive as a lesser than type of experience. And that can also open the door to worrying about sexual performance as opposed to staying focused on sexual pleasure.
Based on that answer, is it possible that condoms alone could cause erectile dysfunction?
So this is an interesting question. So I think I see two types of situations that come to my office. One is that a man is already struggling in some way, shape, or form with being able to gain and maintain an erection. Like I was mentioning earlier, just pausing to open the wrapper for the condom or fumbling to put a condom on or whatnot is enough to distract, or it's enough to decrease the flow of pleasure and cause a man to lose his erection or certainly lose the firmness of his erection. For other men, they may encounter very strong and firm erections as long as they're not using a condom at all. But the one differentiating factor seems to be the condom that might elicit, again, physical concerns in terms of just comfort, and it also might elicit underlying fears about disease or about pregnancy.
So, Mark, we did an episode recently on pregnancy and erectile dysfunction and how the two are interconnected. Can you just recap for us what the essence of that podcast episode was about, as pregnancy and condoms are pretty interrelated if you think about it?
Absolutely, Casey. So what we covered are a number of aspects of how pregnancy or the potential for a pregnancy could impact a man and ultimately his erection. So in particular, we're going to focus the answer to this question on the potential for pregnancy as opposed to an actual pregnant partner. So a lot of what impacts a man is the fear of what it might mean to have a partner who is pregnant, worrying about the future, worrying about if he's ready to settle down or he's ready to take on that kind of responsibility. This can happen both in a long-term committed relationship around adding a child to the family. This can also happen in a hookup where a man is just afraid that sexual activity could lead to pregnancy. All of these fears and ultimately what express themselves as an anxiety or a mind-occupying worry can have a negative impact on erections.
Well, that really connects closely to the next question I want to ask. When you talk about that fear and you talk about condom use, sexually transmitted diseases is another potential reason that someone would want to use a condom to protect themselves against the possibility of contracting a sexually transmitted disease. So we also did an episode on sexually transmitted diseases in ED. So what's the essence of the connection between those two?
So again, I think it's largely fear. I think it's the worry that sex will lead to the contraction of a disease. I've worked with numerous men who have experienced erectile dysfunction following a call from a former partner or having discovered something that doesn't look right either on themselves or on a partner. And there really is a pronounced concern and a pronounced fear that sexual activity, certainly without proper protection, will lead to contracting an STD and potentially an STD that is not really treatable or not really curable. And many people do not want that.
Mark, as long as we're on the topic about condoms, is there anything else you want to discuss about forms of birth control being linked to erectile dysfunction?
So without getting into the specific types of contraception and how each of those could uniquely impact sexuality and, certainly for a man, erectile dysfunction, generally speaking, there are two potential sides to contraception. One is on the male partner, and the second is on the female partner. So for men, it's condoms or a vasectomy. Potentially, one may categorize the use of spermicide as a male-based contraception, and that a man has some control over in terms of at least his awareness in terms of how protected he may be from an unwanted pregnancy or from an STD. Another element or aspect that I think you're touching on with this question is trusting a partner. Certainly if it is a heterosexual relationship and it is a female partner, there are numerous forms of contraception, and many of those are trust-based because the male partner does not see the use of that contraception. Certainly if it's an oral medication or if it's an IUD, in many of these instances, there's really no way to know. If a man does not trust his partner that she is using proper contraception, that can also have open the door to all sorts of worry and anxiety, distract, and ultimately impact a man's ability to gain and maintain an erection, certainly for penetrative sex.
Another great discussion today, Mark. I really thank you for your time. Did you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up today?
I would strongly encourage our listeners to not discard contraception under the belief that somehow that will resolve their erectile dysfunction. There are much better ways to go about addressing the worry and concern while ensuring that your health and overall well-being are ensured. I think the short-term gain or benefit from utilizing a condom properly, I think it certainly outweighs the cost of an unwanted pregnancy or an STD that a man may have to contend with for the rest of his life.
Thanks for listening to the Erectile Dysfunction Radio Podcast. For more information on today's topic and understanding how the mind impacts erectile dysfunction, please visit erectioniq.com. That's erectioniq.com.